Tune in to the Teachers Lounge Talk Show. We are back for our third season. Topics include education, youth redeveloping, communities, and schools. Join us Thursdays from 8 to 9 p.m. Call and be a part of the conversation. Join Leslie Piper, Ms. Falk, Mr. Rear, and Mr. Gardner.
What you were saying, Dr. Umar, I don't believe it is impossible for a white teacher to be able to teach a black child, but the way the School of Education is set up now, it's obsolete. I think there's a lot of equity training out here now, but they're doing it more so in corporations. And this equity training that they're doing now, it should start in the schools before it should start in corporations, because there are a lot of teachers who just they don't get it because of culture. And I just think equity training would be very good for white teachers, any teacher as far as that matter, because we have some problems too when we go with class. You know, we were brought up a certain way, and if we were happen to be brought up in what we perceive was middle class, we bring some of the worst biases as they may do in the classroom.
Because
so
they told us.
It's not just, so I kind of take back what I just said. It's not just white teachers who would benefit from that equity training. We would benefit from it as well.
I would agree with that. But here's the thing, though, because I've done a lot of cultural diversity training in the schools for white psychologists, white educators. Information cannot undo belief.
That's true.
If white people have a fundamental core belief that they are racially superior to black folks, I don't care how much training you do, it will not change their mindset because they don't want to change. I've been in seminars where the teachers just sit there and they go through it, but they don't believe in none of it. Because at the end of the day, America is based on white privilege and black marginalization. The whole culture is designed that way. And education must also reinforce society's dominant agenda. Why? Because if you properly educate a black boy, you upset the apple cart. The black male in America is supposed to be dead last. And if you properly educate our boys, you set them up to potentially come in first. That right there can cause a significant redistribution of wealth, power, and resources in American society. And because of that, the schools by design must fail. But even if we presume, for the sake of conversation, that there's some white folks who can be saved, and I don't agree that they can be, but let's say for the sake of conversation there's a few. Okay? The other thing that we have to understand is even in finding those who could help, it's still a Band-Aid. It's not a solution. A solution is something that you put in place, it eliminates the problem. Teaching white people to be sensitive to the cultural nuances of black children ain't gonna fix this. And guess what? Why? No matter how well-meaning the white teacher is, she or he is still a symbol of white power in the life of black people. The classroom still mimics the plantation in terms of who is the slave and who is the master. Just because you're benevolent doesn't mean you're not a slave master. The solution is to give black boys and black girls, black men and black female teachers who look like them, so you can eliminate the up-down relationship that black and white people have existed in since we got to this country.
You see, that's an inflammatory remark I think you're making, sir. All due respect. Now, in my life, I've had the most upset from my own. And I've had some very endearing moments with white people. Now, are all white people bad? I don't think so.
It ain't about good or bad.
What is it about?
It's not about good or bad. It's about power and powerlessness. We have to stop assigning a moral judgment to political phenomenon. It's not about good white people, bad white people, good black people, bad black people. It's about power and the distribution of resources. And there's no white person in American history, world history, who has ever sought to share equitably with black folks. And if you know of one, please call their name.
Well, what about the slave mistress that taught your ancestor to read? Mrs.
Auld of Baltimore.
Mrs. Auld of Baltimore. Now, if it wasn't for this white woman introducing language and reading and writing to your ancestor, to our ancestor, he never would have grown to be the prolific leader that he was.
Not true.
Why do you?
She initiated the instruction,
Okay.
and then her husband forbade it in the early
So
stages.
hold on, callers.
Thereafter, Frederick Douglass began to teach himself. But here's what I need you to understand. Her teaching Frederick Douglass how to read, or at least attempting to because the husband forbade it once he found out. Her teaching Frederick Douglass how to read has absolutely nothing to do with her belief that black people and white people are equal. She was simply giving a slave child the benefit of literacy. That is significantly different from fighting to destroy the differences and the systematic gaps that exist between black people and white people so we can enjoy the same level playing field. Don't confuse the apple with the oranges. It's just like white folks in Detroit might fight against police genocide. That don't mean they want you living next door. They may fight so black people can get jobs. That don't mean they want you to have the same access to wealth. We keep on confusing the simple, small little things white people do to help black with the systematic changes that none of them have ever fought to dismantle. Give me systematic changes that white folks have fought to eliminate. Don't tell me little charity here, and they did a little special program here, and they built a house for the black poor here. See, if you notice what they do with all these poverty programs, they're designed to do what? Help black people cope with the oppression. But none of the poverty programs are designed to eliminate the oppression.
Caller, welcome to the Teachers Lounge. How can we help you this evening? This is you, caller.
How you doing?
Yes, it's you. How are you? Caller, you have to speak.
I
Come
was just
on.
wondering how y'all looking at the gentleman. I just turned into the show.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Can you repeat?
She
You
said
hear
she
me?
just tuned in. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I noticed that the gentleman is very angry, and he angry at the wrong individuals. You angry at the Caucasian people, and you need to be talking to the African American people that's raising their own children. You can't keep blaming the white people for African American problems. And you so angry, I can't believe they all three are just sitting up there looking at him like, where the hell he come from?
Well,
Well, let me
you
respond
can't
first if I
be
can.
so angry and blaming the. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do you want to?
No, I want you to finish first. I don't want a dialogue. I wanted to finish.
Okay, finish.
We don't want a dialogue.
Caller, are you done?
Go ahead.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, caller.
What you perceive as anger, my sister, is passion. I am not angry. I hold 6 degrees. I'm a very successful black man. I have my own business. I'm the most requested black scholar on the planet in terms of public speaking. I've never been to prison. I have my mother and my father in my life. I'm not angry. I'm passionate because I know that there's other black men who never get the opportunities that I have. I'm passionate because I understand that that American dream that they tell black children is so easy to achieve. At the same time, they systematically disenfranchise and prohibit us from experiencing it. Don't confuse anger with passion. This is not a negative emotion. This is positive, and this is about the love of our people. Now you say I'm mad at the Caucasians. I need to look at black people. And what I'm going to challenge you to do is become more politically educated about the fishbowl that we live in, because it is a fishbowl. See, what I find interesting about black people, love to blame black people for our problems exclusively, is that we don't control none of the systems that marginalize and disenfranchise us. We talk about miseducation. Black parents need to do a better job. I totally agree. But we don't control the schools. We are not the 93% of white middle-class females who are feeding their suburban families off of the special education diet of black boys. We talk about black men going to jail, but we're not the ones locking them up. We are disproportionately underrepresented when it comes to criminal prosecutors on the state and the federal and the local level. We talk about black men not being able to have jobs, but we don't control the economy, nor do we own the banks that distribute the wealth that give people an opportunity to build their own businesses. So how can black people be the cause of their own problems when they don't control none of the systems that create these problems? However, I do agree with you, my queen, that we have the responsibility of solving our problems even though we did not cause them. And we have to eliminate this dichotomy in this conversation that says you have to blame white people for the problem and white people for the solution, or you have to blame black people for the problem and black people for the solution. I disagree with that dichotomy. I'm telling you here and now that we can blame white people for the problem because they started it, and hold ourselves responsible for the solution, because no one is going to end this for us but us. So I agree with you. We got to solve it, but don't you dare tell me that we created it.
Well, I believe that it is incumbent upon black people, especially black educators, to push for whoever gets in front of our children.
I agree.
That they need to understand the social, economic status of our children. They need to understand our psychology. The only thing I guess I would push back on a little bit on is that it is up to us, like I just said, to teach anybody, be they black, white, how they should teach our children.
But let me ask you a question, Elder.
Just 1 second. And then when she talks about the blame, I have to be quite honest. We have black doctor this, we have black doctor that. But
they're not loyal to the race.
And that's true.
You have to be
loyal. I
loyal.
remember when Malcolm X, a famous thing on television, Malcolm X asked this one guy that was sitting next to him, I forgot who he was. He said, what do they call a black man with a PhD?
They call him an N-word.
And they called him an N-word. So my thing is that we need to teach people. We need to teach ourselves, and we need to teach anybody that comes in front of our children how to teach our children. And if it's a really sincere white person, so be it. But we should be the arbiters of who should be in front of them.
Okay.
And if that sincerity is more feigned than it is real, then I think it's incumbent on us to get rid of it.
But here's why I want to respectfully challenge you, Elder. Most white children who go to school in America will never have a black teacher. Over 90% of white children who go to school in this country will never have a black teacher. The overwhelming amount of black children will have a white teacher.
60-40 rule.
Why are we comfortable with our children being taught by white folks is the question. Because white people are not comfortable with the overwhelming majority of their children being taught by black teachers. So why are black people comfortable with the overwhelming majority of our children being taught by white teachers? I'm understanding what you're saying. No matter who comes in front of our children, we want them to be culturally competent to teach them. But why can't we go a step further? Why do we have to make white racist females culturally competent to teach black boys when there's enough black men in Detroit who don't have prison records, who can be given emergency certifications to go into any of these schools in Detroit and educate black boys tomorrow? Why are we trying to make the racist white woman do a job that we got black people to do?
Because the majority of our people would prefer the white racist woman that you're referring to.
And that's kind of general, don't you
Well,
think?
There's some truth to that.
There's rhetoric going around Detroit, and I don't know if you're familiar with Kwame Kilpatrick and his troubles that were going. Okay, so the rhetoric was there was two candidates. There was Mayor Duggan, and then there was Benny Napoleon, and then there was Mayor Duggan and Coleman Young Jr.
Yes.
Both times he ran against black people. The rhetoric around town was black men messed it up for Detroit. We need a white man to use his connections to fix our problems. And I disagree with that. You know,
I agree with you.
You know, and that's why I was saying there's a lot of, I hate to use the word Uncle Tom, but there's a lot of African Americans that believe white people can do a better job at these professional positions. So that's why you'll never hear anybody jumping up and down or questioning the 60-40 rule. Why are no black people teaching white kids? Is because we as a community, I think as a whole, believe that white people do a better job at professional positions.
Now, before we move on, can we educate our audience on what the 60-40 rule is? Because I found out about it from you, Brother Gardner. What is it? Can you talk about the 60-40?
You tell me, because there's a 60-40 rule in Philadelphia. I don't know if it's the same in Detroit. And that 60-40 rule says that every school, even though the students are predominantly black, 60% of the teachers must be white in a predominantly black public school.
Is that how you know? That's a 60-40. Caller, thank you so much for being patient. Welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. How can we help you this evening?
Praise the Lord. Hello.
Praise the Lord. Hello. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm calling to let you know, since I retired 29 years as U.S. Congressional Liaison in Washington at the White House, I want you to know there's studies out that there's a proven record. That young man there he hit the target right there. He made a good statement. You should listen to it. because it's proven. You could check with NIH or any study institute, check out these books at a public library or whatever you want to use. The love starts within the womb. You start teaching that child in the womb while you're carrying that child. No color has anything to do with it. It's all in the heart. Because we're now interrace. We're married to white, black. I have it all in my family. We all have whites in our family. So you just can't say white, black, yellow, green. You're doing the same thing Trump doing. Muslims, don't think about that. A human being is a human being. And you should treat the person the way you would like to be treated. That's what the word of God. And it works out every time. It's nothing wrong with having the agape love for everybody. And if you have knowledge, be willing to share it. And it's nothing wrong, like the lady who called before me. I know we have a passion for everything we do, but please have the meekness of our God to share it with people so they can receive it in their heart and not let it fall off on stony ground. And I thank you for taking my call because you're doing a wonderful job, young man, because you hit the nail on the head. We can talk for days about they end up electing the person that's of a different color. The African-American people have billions and trillions of dollars, but it's how they spend their dollar. So we have the money. Don't tell me we don't have the money. We just don't spend it the way we should spend it. And thank you for taking my call. I won't bother you anymore.
Oh, you're no bother, please. We hope to be bothered next week if you give us a tune in.
I just want to say in response to that, and I agree with the spirit of the Queen Mother's message, but I want to say this, psychologically speaking. One of the reasons why we remain backward and underdeveloped as a people is because we are the only non-white ethnicity in these United States who do not put themselves first and foremost before they consider other people. We are the only non-white ethnic group in the United States who is not passionate about their position amongst other people. When Chinese come to America, they come to build a cultural empire. The Arabs in Dearborn, they're here to build a cultural empire. The East Indians, they are here to build cultural empire. They're not looking to share. They're not looking to integrate. They're not looking to participate. They are looking to dominate. And as long as black people are comfortable having nothing except the goodwill to be shared with other groups, we are always going to be dead last. Your first obligation is to your family, your community, your people, and then you look out for everyone else. But we want to care about everybody else before we taking care of our own house. And that's why we at the bottom and everyone else is laughing at us.
Do you think that has something to do, though, a lot to do with a lot of people like to say slavery is over, but they're still
slavery never ended.
They're still lingering. There's still lingering effects.
It ain't even lingering. I would argue that slavery did not exist before 1865. I would argue that slavery began in 1865. What am I saying? Nat Turner wasn't a slave. Harriet Tubman wasn't a slave. Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Martin Delany, they were not slaves. You could not force them to work against their people's own best interests. They were free. See, when people are free-minded, you got to put chains on them. When people are free-minded, you got to beat them. When people are free-minded, you got to shackle them and cut toes off and cash them because they free. So you got to do what? Dominate them because they free. A slave is a person who don't need slave shackles. They don't need to be beat. You understand? They will perform the deed of the master without even being told. Our ancestors under so-called slavery was free. We the slaves today.
I guess I was just talking about as far as comparing other cultures that come here, because their culture, how they grew up, was a lot different than what we experienced here. So
Yes,
sometimes
yes, yes.
I have to push back on when they say, oh, these other cultures, they come in here, they achieve, they do better than we are. And I'm just talking about whether it started in 1865, Jim Crow, whatever. There are lingering effects from all that institutional racism,
Yes, without
that
question.
structural violence that unfairly compares us
Yes.
to other cultures that come over here
I agree.
and succeed, which goes back to my point about this equity training when it comes to not just white teachers, but I don't even think a lot of African Americans. In fact, I know we don't understand those
agree.
lingering effects.
But it's the
So
community's
until
job
we
to do that.
And that's what I just said in the first place. So until we take control of the education for our kids, until we it needs to be flipped upside down. The School of Education right now it's useless. It's actually useless for our kids. In this day and age, if our kids are still doing that white baby, black dog
Yes.
baby,
Still
and
want
they're
the white
still
dog.
and they're still picking the white baby, we have failed just as much as the institution because we're supposed to have more education now. So this whole way that we teach kids, especially our kids, it just needs to be flipped upside down. The School of Education basically needs to be wiped out, but we need to take control of how the School of Education should be when it comes to teaching our kids.
But if you won't give the black girl a white doll, why would you give the black girl a white teacher? If she don't need a white doll, she don't need a white teacher either. In fact, it's because she has the white teacher that she wants the white doll. Why do you even have public school in Detroit? The only reason why you still have public school, and you won't have it 30 years from now, but the reason you have it is because you got too many white women who got bills to pay, food, clothing, and shelter for their families, that they cannot be all laid off at once because it would be political disaster for those elected officials who currently hold office. If most teachers were black, public school would have been destroyed a long time ago. It only exists to pay the mortgage of white women. They use white women to miseducate our sons, and they use their white husbands to lock them up after they get miseducated.
Caller, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. How can we help you this evening? Welcome to the conversation.
Good evening, Teachers Lounge and panel. I just have a question for Mr. Umar Johnson. I noticed a couple of months ago you were on the Malik Shabazz show, and I guess you had a project were coming in and, coming to Detroit and stuff like that with kind of narrative of getting a charter school together. Do you not know how the charter schools were formed? And do you not know the statistics on our kids and our kids' future with going to and coming from a charter school? The data, the 99% of black kids that go to charter schools, for one, can't really make it in society. Two, they're failing. Three, the school teachers that they do have there are not qualified to teach the kids. So going back to two, those things all go together. You have the kids not being taught by qualified teachers. You also have kids that's not actually getting the actual opportunity at a good education by being a charter school. So the only thing you have in a charter school is reading, writing, and arithmetic. You have no electives. You have no after-school programs. You have no athletics or anything. It's just like you just there. It's like an academy. And you know where academies are. It's like a second hand to an academy.
Thank you for calling in, caller.
Academy is to send you to military, am I correct?
Caller, thank you so much. I guess the caller wants to know your opinion of charter schools.
Certainly. Well, first, let me correct the assumptions. Okay, as a former charter school principal and a former charter school vice principal, I have no interest whatsoever in opening a charter school. If I did, I could probably have 25 of them across the country. Charter schools, by law, are alternative public schools. They are owned and controlled by the state, and they can put you out of operation whenever they feel like it. I'm a Pan-Africanist and a Garveyite. We believe in owning our institutions, not leasing them from white folks. So I'm not opening no charter school. I don't want to open no charter school. I am opening an independent African institution totally funded by the black dollar.
So would it be a freedom school?
It will be a Pan-African nationalist, unapologetically African alpha male institution.
Boom on that. Boom on that.
Well, you know, we're just real quick. We, unfortunately, when it comes to the teachers, we're not getting enough black teachers, whether they're male or female.
They're systematizing them out of opportunities.
Well, okay,
Factually.
we could debate about that, but we're not saying, hey, black teacher, no, we're not going to take you. Come on in, white teacher. I mean, we're 250 teachers short as it is.
Yeah, but who's controlling the hiring? You're not. White folks controlling the hiring. They systematically make sure the jobs go to their folks with a few going to us. No community. Chinese people wouldn't allow it. Arabs wouldn't allow it. Mexicans wouldn't allow it. East Indians wouldn't allow it. European Jews wouldn't allow it. Anglo-Saxons wouldn't allow it. You can't name a race on this planet who would be absolutely comfortable letting their former enslaver educate their children.
So what are we supposed to do about that?
Create. 2016, we spent $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on alcohol, $9 billion on weave and perm, $650 million on McDonald's. We bought twice the Mercedes Benzes of white folk, even though they had 3 times the wealth of black people. What we're doing right now with this Christmas shopping, this is financial betrayal. How we got time to be buying gifts when our children don't even have a decent school to learn it?
Would you attribute that to the fact that I would look at African Americans as the youngest group out of what you name, Mexicans, East Indians? We're African Americans are fairly new. What I mean by that is, you know, we haven't been around that long. We just got enslaved, got over here, got mixed together. We don't really have a culture. So it's kind of like
culture.
It's kind of like
it's African culture.
Yeah, but we weren't taught
that. We don't want it
as
because we've been taught to hate it.
As a whole, we've adopted the European culture.
Yes.
And that's why you see the over shopping and the overcompensating with the Jordans or whatnot.
Exactly.
Where do we go from here to create a culture for ourselves? Because now when you think of the culture of African Americans, I hear the hip hop movement or the hip hop generation, and that just doesn't. That seems like a slap in the face to me to attribute our culture to just saying hip hop,
rap, and basketball.
Well, pretty much, yeah. So where do we go from here to to have something that's our own? Because when the Chinese people come over here or the Indians come over here,
they come with culture intact.
They have their own language, they have their own religion, there's their own sense of pride, their own culture. We don't really have that. It's like kind of like, you know, we've just adopted the European culture.
We did. Here's the situation though. You could have had cultural restoration. It's been 153 years. In 2 years, we'll be celebrating the quadricentennial of black arrival in America as enslaved Africans, because we were here before that, 1619 to 2019. We're about to hit 400. The problem is black people don't want to be who they are, okay? They hate who they are. It will never be accepted as what they want to be, okay? We have a identity crisis, and we have a psychological homeless problem that nobody wants to deal with. Black people are psychologically homeless. We know that we ain't white, but we damn sure don't want to be black. And that contradiction, that disturbance, that inability to resolve those two competing impulses is at the center of our issues.
All right. Caller, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. How can we help you this evening?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening, rather, instead of afternoon. I just want to thank you, Dr. Umar Johnson, for a different idea of how we need to go about educating our children. And I hope that it works. Give our address and everything where we can donate money to help you get this thing started and build it. I know of another group of excellent black men like you called Israel United in Christ, and they're also setting up black schools for our children, the same as you are. So I hope we can get this thing working and get our own for once and for all and stop depending on the oppressor for giving us what we need when we already got what we need and has always had what we need. And we're not new to this land over here. Some of us are already here when they got here. So we've been here all the time. And everybody just have a good night.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
caller.
caller.
With three, and I know you're an educator too, but you're talking right now to 3 classroom educators sitting at this table. And I guess everything that you say about the consumerism and what we're spending our money on, we've been talking about that for years. And I guess my problem is the solution. Because we can sit here and we can talk and talk, but everybody sitting at this table knows, as long as we've been teaching, the kids that are exiting our classrooms are not ready for the 21st century or for life right now. So I guess when you put everything that you said, it's true. We are lost. We have some cultural hatred. We have a lot of those things. But I'm looking for what do we do? What can we do now?
Can I jump in?
Institutions and organization. That's the only thing that's going to save black folks.
Now, maybe it's just me, but I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't get me wrong. Everybody has. Yeah, I said it. I think we are in pretty good shape. I think we are in pretty good shape. We're not perfect, but listen, we've only been here for a short amount of time. And to survive the way we have, to build the way we have, to have acquired what we have acquired.
I'm not
even
content.
If it's material, it's something. I think when we put our minds to it, we can do anything.
Oh, of course.
We've proven that.
When we put our collective mind
I just
together.
want to change the narrative that, black people are so messed up. No, we're not. We're as messed up as we want to be.
I agree.
I think we are surviving people. I think we're a resilient people. I think we're a beautiful people. And I think we will be here well before other cultures die out. So what uplifting can we leave our audience with? We're not downing us anymore.
No, I think the whole conversation was uplifting. See,
Okay.
here's the one thing we got to understand. And this is a weakness of us as a people.
Come on, bring it.
And this is one of the reasons why black consciousness has been short on results.
Okay.
Because we want to do the feel-good thing. Damn the feel-good thing. Deal with the reality of things. When somebody comes to therapy, okay, we're going to do a historical assessment of their alcohol, historical assessment of their diabetes, historical assessment of their low self-esteem, historical assessment of their domestic violence. Only when you understand the history thoroughly can you solve the problem. For example, we know the schools ain't working, but you ain't going to fix them by knowing they ain't working. You got to know how they don't work. We don't understand the operative mechanisms of the systems of white supremacy that keep us entrapped, and that's why we stay entrapped within them. But here's the other thing I wanted to say. Today's racism is economic. They're keeping black people disenfranchised and powerlessness through controlling the resources, and that's the banks. Whoever controls the banks controls the wealth and controls poverty. Whoever controls the banks controls the wealth and controls the poverty. There is no bank in Detroit that's going to finance black liberation. There's no bank in Detroit that's going to finance black liberation. So we have to put our Christmas money and our Thanksgiving money and our Easter money and our 4th of July money together and finance our own liberation. Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. The average black person is not willing to sacrifice financially for our freedom. That's our Achilles heel. We don't want to sacrifice financially for black freedom.
You know, we have been just told that we have about 2 minutes left. Doc, let's break this down for a little bit. And callers, you know, our lines are lit up. We're not going to get to you this evening because I just want to bring this conversation down to what I call some silliness. Sir, what's your favorite cartoon?
My favorite cartoon?
Yeah, that's right.
It probably... Is there a Marcus Garvey cartoon? Is there a Malcolm X cartoon? Is there an Ida B. Wells cartoon out there?
There's the Boondocks.
Is there a Fannie Lou Hamer? Not the Boondocks.
Daffy Duck was black.
Yes, Daffy Duck was black with a mouthful of Ebonics. Northwest Activity Center, New Year's Day. Make sure y'all come out. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, Kwanzaa Day 7, New Year's Day 1, January 1st, Northwest Activity Center, 6 o'clock, doors at 4. All children are free. All elders are free. Be there.
Make sure you tune in next week to the Teacher's Lounge. Buy the book. Buy the brother. This was a great show. Call in next week. Power to the people, y'all. We're going to stay black. We're going to keep it black. We're going to stay strong. We're resilient. We're great. We're a mighty race. Up, you mighty race. Up.
You can accomplish what you will.
Yes. So long. Yes.
All right.
Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was good.
Tune in to the Teachers Lounge Talk Show. We are back for our third season. Topics include education, youth redeveloping, communities, and schools. Join us Thursdays from 8 to 9 p.m. Call and be a part of the conversation. Join Leslie Piper, Ms. Falk, Mr. Rear, and Mr. Gardner.